Hey, Nicole. So, I'd like to introduce Nicole. She is a Canadian attorney and a wellness consultant. She specializes in building healthy work environments and strong governmental relationships that are supportive. She is a phenomenal bead worker, and I believe that's some of her work that she has up behind her. And so, Nicole, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you. And if you'll just go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself and share your story.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sheila, obviously, for the sisterhood that you've shown me over the last little while. I was on Alan's show not too long ago, and I communicated that I feel often like a fraud in these circumstances because it's, I think, and Emma Louise and I talk about this, like, it's fun to be a human and we're here to be a human. And sometimes the things that I've experienced are things that anybody can experience or can know. And sometimes, but I forget. And that's what Barbara said. It's that they don't quite know it yet. So I think anything that I've experienced or that I will talk about today is available to anybody. Um, and I think it's fun. I'm having a really fun time being a human. I will warn you guys, for anyone that is, I want to forewarn for anyone that's listening as a trigger, I am going to talk about suicide. So if that's a trigger for anyone, I just want you to be prepared. I'm going to talk about it in a loving, supportive way, but that is coming up in my presentation. So I am going to share my screen, and I prepared a presentation. I am a lawyer by training, which you guys call in the States an attorney. We call it being a lawyer, a barrister, a solicitor. There are lots of different names for this. I present for a living, although I have to say this is the first time that I'm speaking directly on this topic of my spiritual development, especially through this very specific lens of being a walk-in. So this is exciting for me. It's a very dynamic topic, and to be with this crowd of people feels very humbling for me. So I want to talk about you guys about how my experience of undergoing tremendous tragedy, personal tragedy, has been the reason for my walk-in to have come in the way that it did. And I want to just talk about how I'm evolving and how the different experiences that I've had. And I can only tell you about Nicole. I'm not a grand spiritual teacher. And I don't mean to make this presentation egotistical, like Nicole is so great, because I identify strongly with being Nicole. It's fun to be Nicole. No, Nicole's like a great avatar to have. I chose well. It's fun. But I think Nicole is an example of one way that a person can live their life. And I just want to tell you about the things that I'm growing to know about myself. So I'm Anishinaabe, which means Ojibwe. So I'm Indigenous from Canada, and this is we call it my big fat Indigenous family. I live in the Anishinaabe Ojibwe language. We say Nindinawe Maganatug, and that means all my relations. And so being born into an Indigenous family and having Anishinaabe Ojibwe worldview really prioritizes my spiritual development, because a lot of the things that I've come into learning and understanding in more of a universal way, we've been practicing culturally for millennia. And this is my family. When you travel in the community, and so I'm a lawyer. I work a lot with Indigenous communities. I help them develop their own policies. I help them develop their own ways of knowing. We're very big about this issue of decolonization. And so when there's this mask debate, or and my friend Emma Louise talks about how the government is controlling us, we're like, heck, that's been happening to Indigenous people for like years and years and years. And so this whole dynamic is not, it's not new to me. It's about how I was raised. So you'll see my uncle in the corner sitting in the chair. He was the chief of my community for, I don't know, maybe 20 years, for a very long time. And when I was pondering what I was going to do with my life, he said, you should go to law school. We have outstanding land claims. We have never surrendered our land. We need someone to champion this for us. And that's the work that I did eventually end up doing, although the way that I practice law now is a little different. I don't actually engage very much in Canadian law. I do a lot of Anishinaabe law, and I help different groups that want to make their own rules and make their own laws. And in Canada, we have constitutional space protection for that. So I'm living a great life, like really exciting things. And I just want to point out in this picture, we didn't do this on purpose, but we have an empty chair. And when we talk about this picture, we call it the spiritual chair, because we acknowledge that there's a space that's held for people that have gone or people that might come. So this is my family. And the last word on my slide, Anishinaabe, when you break that down phonetically, it means from whence the original male of the species was lowered. So we've always understood that we're not from the earth, that we've come from somewhere else. And so a lot of Indigenous communities have this knowledge, have this awareness. And so when I talk really openly about the beings, the blue beings and the star people, there's precedent in my community for talking about it. Although they maybe don't call it the star people, or maybe don't call them the Arcturians, but I believe that these beings have been working with these communities for a really long time. And I'll talk about that in my presentation. So this is where I live. I live on the north shore of Lake Superior. For those of you who can sort of think about what this map is, this is the Great Lakes system. I live, I don't know if, no, I don't have a way to show you, but if you can picture the very top of Lake Superior, that is where I live. I live 3 hours from the closest city. I live in the bush. I live at the very edge of my very small town, right on the shore of Lake Superior. So every day I walk through the bush, every day I go and see the lake, every day I get to connect with this land. And I understood that I had recurring dreams that would bring me back to this place, and specifically to live at the edge of the town where I live. I have very specific obligations to be here because I think I take care of portals that are placed. So I have a spiritual responsibility to be here. And when I try to go, I get called back, and it's just a really beautiful lifestyle, which is really, I'm very blessed in that way. So growing up, I was always a spiritual kid. Emma talked about no, not Emma. Sheila talked about Dolores Cannon's work. Dolores has been very, very, very influential on me. She talked about the 3 waves of volunteers. I definitely identified even before I was a walk-in, or around that time, as a second waver. And a second waver is someone who's here on purpose. They've agreed to come. They've accepted a mission. And Dolores says it in such a beautiful way, because we stress about, like, what am I supposed to be doing? What's my big mission? And the reality is, you don't have to do anything, because your vibrational essence just radiates onto other people, and that's it. And I take that to heart, and that makes things a lot easier. Evidence of my interdimensional nature, I would speak different languages while I was sleeping. So my mom would overhear and say, what was that? And I'd be like, I don't know. Forest walking, when I was a little kid, I would go out into the bush, and I would be absolutely sure that when I retreated from my walk, I would come out and everything would be totally different. So I realized now that I had a memory or an awareness of walking through portals where I came from, and I fully expected that I could activate portals out in the bush. Would constantly have flying dreams where I would just be flying through we all had these flying, a lot of us who are, star kids have these flying dreams, because it's our original nature, right? To be able to fly. So I'd have these flying dreams. And when I was only 18 months, I stood at the top of the stairs, and I remember the vivid memory of standing at the top of the stairs and thinking, if I jump, it's no problem because I can fly, right? So obviously I didn't fly. I also have a memory of my sister and I being little. And so these are my 2 sisters. This is, my father is from Newfoundland, which is on the East Coast. It's a province in Ontario, or it's a province in Canada. I'm the little one in the red. My older sister, Michelle, is standing up in the green shirt, and my sister, Chantel, who is also extremely galactic, although she's a university professor, and she's having a harder time with this. She's in the little blue dress. But my sister Chantel, so the one in the blue dress, and I are standing and we're going, the round airplanes are back, and they just whiz by and we can hear them just whizzing, like they're silent, but we can hear them still, and they're round. So it was really interesting. And then there was an experience this summer. I was at my mom's house where I grew up, and there's a flight path for a helicopter to go and pick up people at the hospital, and it's dark, and I go and I stand outside, and this helicopter goes directly overhead, and I just stood there and I cried outside, because it was just this strong feeling of like, I wish they were coming for me. And so there are old memories. So I don't consciously go on the ships, but I am aware of like my galactic lineage in that way. So I'm a dreamer. I'm not an astral projector. Not yet. I haven't achieved that yet, but I do think it's possible for anyone if that is their calling. All right. When I was a kid, also, I was lucky to grow up with spiritual teachers. And when I was, this is a piece of artwork from the internet, and not from the internet. It's by this guy named by Red Bear, and this is a representation of a sweat lodge, which is a ceremony that Anishinaabe people have. And when we were kids, there was a Lakota man who came up from I think it was from South Dakota or North Dakota, and he came and he did ceremony in our area. And during that time, he manifested a miracle. He had the lodge, the beings showed up, there were eagles and bears and sounds and all of these things happening. And my cousin, who went in with a broken arm, came out with no broken arm. And so I think that was like my most spiritually significant experience. And it planted a bug, like, okay, this is possible. And number two, I think growing up for me, I grew up in ceremony a lot. We were in ceremony all the time, but there were a lot of hierarchies that said, no, this knowledge is very private. Only some people are special enough, and there are different ceremonial protocol that have to take place, and women are excluded for certain reasons. And it was really tricky for me to grow up through that. And my whole modus operandus in life, was to figure this out. How did that work? So I don't believe in miracles. I believe that miracles are just a technology that we don't understand quite yet. So that was a key experience in my life. I'm also a powwow dancer. This is me. I love this picture because I'm dancing with all the young women that I travel with. So we travel in the powwow circuit. This is me. I used to have very long hair. I've been cutting my hair recently. I make jingle dresses, and this is me dancing at a powwow in a jingle dress. It's a healing dress. And in Anishinaabe culture, we talk about sheshegwan, which is the original sound at creation. So the sound of the jingles make is the same sound of the sheshegwan, which is the word for shaker, the original creation sound. It's also very mindful practice, right? Like the rhythm of the beat, it can bring you into an altered state of consciousness. So it's part of who I was. So I went on to become a lawyer. So this is my father and I. Being a lawyer is fun. Being a lawyer is also essential to my spiritual mission, because it gives me a lot of legitimacy, right? Like I can say things and people are like, well, she's our lawyer, and she believes in aliens, so do we. And so it's really fun for giving me more and more legitimacy, and I am very, very grateful. Plus, I make a great living, so I don't have to charge for my healing or for my meditation work, which is awesome because I don't ever have to hustle. I get to do it because I love doing it. After I graduated from law school, I went on to meet this handsome bugger named Corey Crow. And, like I said, growing up Indigenous means we're always political. We're always advocating for something. We always have to, stand our boundaries, protect our culture. And this is my husband. We weren't married yet here, but we were at a march, and we were in Canada and also in the States. Indigenous women go missing at a disproportionate rate. And so this was a march that we did. Corey was Indigenous from Alderville First Nation. So on that map of Lake Superior, his home community is about a 12-hour drive away. So our life together went back and forth between these two places, which is geographically far and difficult, but we did it. So he was an Indigenous person always. And before I met Corey, I was constantly moving. I never really felt settled. But when I met him, I immediately knew him, and he seemed to cure all homesickness. Like, just being around him made me feel better. And leading up to our marriage, Indigenous people have had a hard go. Culture has been stripped from them, intergenerational trauma, disproportionate, sexual abuse because of the interference of the church. Like, lots of forces have worked to attempt to destroy Indigenous people. And so Corey, like so many Indigenous men, had a lot of difficulties, including unresolved trauma. And the way that showed up in him was he really liked to drink. And made me really angry because I don't have an addictive personality. I've never had that need. And so I could never understand. He would just go out and he would need to drink and get totally drunk. And it made me angry. And I would always try and leave him and be like, why am I with this person? He's handsome and he's kind and he's good, but he just can't pull through these addictions. And there was this process that kept us together. And up until our marriage, I didn't even want to get married to him. I loved him. Believe me, I loved him. Corey was my soulmate, but he just couldn't get it together. And in just before we were married, I had a vision of my grandmother. My grandmother, Adeline, died while I was in law school. So that would have been in 2006. So we got married in 2010. And she came to me and she was dressed all in white. And she was in in my dream, I was standing in the fruit aisle at the grocery store, and this big limo pulls up. And my mom brings her over to me, and my grandmother, who never spoke English to me in my life, starts speaking perfect English. She's dressed all in white, and she says, "You are doing the right thing." And I was like, okay. And I knew instinctively that meant I had to go through with the wedding. And we did. And there were other things that happened, other visions. I saw Corey and I standing together at the lake, and all of these, and I was not doing a lot at this time. I was only 30, I wasn't really, I was awake, but I wasn't totally, like channeling beings or doing a lot of meditation, but the forces really kept us together. So we got married in 2010. We had a ceremony, a traditional ceremony, and I love this photo so much. You can see how much he was looking at me with love. And it was a difficult marriage because he just couldn't get over this drinking thing. And what happened in 2012 is we broke up. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I cannot handle you. You need to figure this out. This is not a healthy relationship. And I went so far as to date another person. Corey went back to live in his First Nation. And during the time that we were apart, my life just fell apart, right? Like I was so sick. I couldn't eat. I just missed him. And Corey, in the meantime, he quit drinking and he started working on himself. And so we broke up for 5 or 6 months. The other relationship that I was in completely fell apart. Went up in a bomb. You couldn't ask for a worse ending to a relationship. I was really believed I was heartbroken over this other guy. And Corey was the only one that could bring me back. This feeling of homesickness again could only be relieved by my husband. And so I knew at this time that I felt like I was surrendering to an obligation. And so I continued my relationship. Corey and I got back together. And in our second phase of our relationship, we did really well. Like, I really have to hand it to Corey. He wanted it so badly. And after we got back together, Corey said, Nicole, I really want you to come. I want to show you that we can live in my community. There's a lot of chaotic drinking. There's a lot of drug use. It's a difficult place, but I want you to come and to be there with me. And I said, okay. So I left my law practice, which was in a city called Thunder Bay, where I have a lot of friends, a lot of relationships. I left everything. I didn't really want to leave everything, but I did. I had to see things through with my husband. And so this is what happened. Maybe 9 months later, I'm dealing with all this personal chaos. I'm committed to a relationship. I don't really know why I have to do it. I am working in some stupid law firm that doing stupid areas of law that I hate. I'm personally really dissatisfied. I'm lonely. And I think there was some kind of metaphysical call for help that went out, that Nicole has to see this through. She doesn't quite know how to. And so what happened was I manifested a car accident. And it happened on January 24th, 2014, which I just want to point out is 7 years ago. My 7 year cycle of this is coming up, which is amazing. 7 years has been really important culturally. As Anishinaabe people, we believe in 7 year cycles, but I'll tell you more about how things turned out, and you can judge for yourself. But it's been really just to note the 7 year cycle, and was really fascinating to go through this car accident because I didn't panic. I was just like, oh, this is what is happening now. And I mean, this car is a total write off. I walked away. I had no injuries. I was doing car accident litigation, which is hilarious. So I was suing, going to court for people that got into car accidents. I had no awareness of any injuries. I knew that I had some soft tissue neck injuries, like the mechanism of the, whip lash. You get a big stretch. Um, it could have been way worse. And so because I had done so much car accident litigation for my clients, I was like, I'm not going to emerge. I'm not going to go and, sit and get x-rays that aren't going to tell me anything, because I knew the limits of medicine to cope with this kind of thing. But it was obviously a shake, right? What ends up happening is I just fall into this more diminished part component of myself. I just slowly, but because I'm living in my husband's community, no one really knows me that well. And Corey is not the person who's going to say, Nikki baby, there's something wrong with you. And so we just let it be. And I just couldn't practice law. Screw that. I just kind of, I hung out. I was like, you know what? When am I ever going to do this again? So I was very obsessed with this idea of past life regressions. I was very obsessed with Dolores Cannon's work. I went on to study hypnosis. I went on to study past life regression, and I was very determined. I wasn't really especially interested. I think they put it in my mind, past life regression. And like anytime I would hear someone, like say in 2012, talk about past life regression, it would make me sick to my stomach, because I was be like, okay, it was almost like, they plant clues, right? So that was my clue. And that was the area I was learning. I was being trained on purpose in these areas. And I was really looking for the beings, right? I knew from Dolores's work that we were connected to higher dimensions, and I really wanted to find them. This was my mission. We also decided to move back to Marathon. So the small town that I live in now, we decided after my car accident that we would come back. I needed really to take 5. And while I was practicing law prior, one of my clients was a chiropractor. And when he saw me at the end of 2014, he said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing. My low back is really sore," because I've always had chronic low back pain. And he said, "No, what's wrong with you?" And he started doing all these diagnostic tests. And he said, "You have a concussion." And I was like, "No, I don't. I'm fine. Everything's fine. No, it's cool. No problem." Like A-type personality, doesn't want to admit that I need help. And he says, you have a concussion, and we need to get you on, I needed someone that I could trust to tell me that. And that was when I started to resolve. But what I understand now was when I had the accident in January 2004, pardon my dogs for barking. When I had the accident in January 2014, that was the walk-in experience. When I had the cry out for help, I got more of my own self. I don't feel different. Now that things are integrating, I just feel like more of my own self came in. And I want to tell you about what happened. It's fun. This is the best part. See this lady in the blue at the end? Her name is Jackie. She died. But before she died, she and I had a mission. And that was one of my dresses. You saw that I was wearing that dress with Corey in the No More Missing Sisters. That's Jackie. And she's just friggin' galactic as heck. Okay. And I knew that right away. So I was like, Jackie, I'm training in past life regressions. Do you want to try? And so she would come and she would do these regressions, and she would have elaborate visions of like being in New York. I was like, boring. I want to see the beings. And like she would come in and she would have all these, like, she was a very good regressive client. But that's not what I wanted. So in about 2000, probably the end of 2015, she's lying on my couch. Corey's downstairs. We're living in Marathon at the time. She's laying on my couch, and this is so funny. She's goes into this trance state, and all of a sudden she says, and now there's a big blue being standing in your living room. And I'm just like, I've manifested this. I've called them in. I've wanted this. And now they're here. Like, what do we do? And I didn't know that the Arcturians were a thing. I didn't know that there were types of beings. I just thought they're beings. So anyways, and then so funny. They started spelling the name out because she was trying to stutter it out. She's going the and she couldn't get it out. And when she came back, they typed the letter into her forehead. So she stayed at our house that night, and she typed and she Googled, and everything that she had channeled in her session was very consistent with the Arcturian teachings. So that's how we met the Arcturians. And they told her that many of us Indigenous people are very connected to the Arcturians. She told me that my ability to create and to sew comes from them. That's something that I channel through them. Around that time, I also started working with the Hathors. Tom Kenyon is brilliant. I don't know if you guys know him. If you don't, he's amazing. He has a book. I have it right here. It's one of my favorite books called the Arcturian Anthology. So he does sound healing, and he channels like vibrational music. So the Hathors started traveling with me because I was so scared. I took a job where I had to travel all the time. I wasn't practicing law, but I took a different job. And the Hathors would travel with me, and they would keep me safe. They would just be in my car, and I would just like I wouldn't physically know that they were there, but I could tell that they were there, and I would just talk back and forth to them. I also started teaching guided meditation because I was looking for someone who could hypnotize me, and I thought if I just start teaching these people, someone will learn and someone will hypnotize me, and we can contact more beings. This is what I was thinking. All right, so probably around 2016. I had a dream, and this is where I found out about my mission. And in my dream, so I had always had dreams about being in elevators and portals, but they show up like, they look like I'm in an elevator or an underground tunnel, or sometimes the elevators will go like off in all different directions. So I know that if I'm having a dream like that, it's a spiritual dream. I also have dreams of tunnels. I also have of trains, and I also have dreams of airplanes. Frequently, I'm getting ready to go on a giant international flight, and I have to make sure I have my passport. When I wake up from those dreams, that's how I know I'm going into interdimensional places. The other thing that I dream that's quite beautiful is sometimes I'll look up into the sky and I'll see like thousands of planes and jets and ships, and they're all in like going off in different directions. And so that's how I know. I just thought everyone dreamt like that. And I don't know if Rebecca Hardcastle is on yet. I think she's presenting next. But when I told Rebecca this, she's like, no, Nicole, those are not normal dreams. I was like, okay, maybe something is going on here. So the man in black comes to me. I'm in a subway session. I'm in a subway station, and I'm standing there looking around. And he says, Nicole, I have a job for you. And it's not like you can negotiate this, right? This man in black is like telling me what I need to do. And he says, you're going to go, and where you're going to go, the people are going to be sleeping, but they don't know that they're sleeping. And he said, it's going to look very real. It is not real. And he said, it will feel like you're gone for a really long time. But when you get back, it'll just be like a few minutes have passed. So I was like, okay. So I get into an elevator, and I go down, and I come out in Marathon. And I remember coming out of this portal, just disappeared. I'm in Marathon, and I see Lake Superior, and I think, man, that is so freaking beautiful. And I see people, and I'm like, they are sleeping, but they have no idea that they're sleeping. And so as I found out more about myself, I started studying a lot with the Ethan Fox gang. They call themselves Awaken Empowered. I started going to their conference in Detroit, And I had chronic low back pain at the time. And my whole thinking was like, people who are spiritual can heal themselves, and I'm going to have that experience. But I didn't realize by doing all of the meditations and by doing all the clearings that I was actually changing my whole experience of the world. And so I ended up going to a conference where I had a session with Caroline Corey where she massively activated me. I'd been doing Ethan Fox's energy transfers for a few months, and I was just clearing everything that I had this giant shift of timelines where I jumped, I don't know, like 15 timelines. And the experience of this thing called the Mandela effect, I had all these old memories of the old world. And then within a very short period of time, everything was different. And I can talk about that at another time, but it took me time to get grounded. Like everything was different. I started having very visual dreams of space. There is a place that I would travel to. It was like a flat place that had like a rainbow disc around the edge, and you could kind of like walk to the edge, but you wouldn't walk off. It was really interesting. I've been to this place that's like a dome, and there's just like the galaxy, like the stars are everywhere, and there's a person standing next to me giving me instructions, although I don't have a clear memory of that. And there's a spiral staircase, and that's like one of my most beautiful dreams. And then the planes, tunnels and subways that I talked about. I started to really integrate whatever was happening, and I really wanted to meet my spiritual family. And so I was able to work with a hypnotist, and had this dream where I was in a plane with my dad, and we landed on this red planet, and we were brought to the middle of the planet where there was this beautiful palace, and it was like a selenite tower. And there were like opera, how like there are opera boxes around the corner. So like there were beings or people around the edge of this whole thing. And it was like everyone was just waiting for me to get there. And when I came in, my friend Jackie, the one who introduced us to the Arcturians, died of a stroke. She meets me there, and she in my regression, Jackie is already on the other side. She meets me there and she brings me to the middle, and there's this beautiful blue being dressed all in just elaborate jewelry everywhere. She's the boss, and she is waiting for me. And she just like has all of these things to say, which I don't really remember at this time what it was. But I remember the feeling of like, all of these people are here for me. It's crazy. It's like a crazy experience. And then in 2018, Rebecca Hardcastle Wright did a regression at a conference that we were at together. And that's when I actually got to meet my mother. So this is my mother. And I'll go to the next slide. This is a piece of beadwork that I've done. My mother is, I believe her to be a queen. She's shows up in meditation. Sometimes she's very severe and very serious. This is me in the middle. And although I don't have children in this life, I do have a little galactic daughter. Yeah, so I believe, based on what I've seen, the fact that this mother figure who's constantly showing up, and she's my boss. In the human life, I don't really have a lot of authority figures who can tell me what to do, but this woman is definitely my authority figure. I defer to her a lot, but we also have a funny relationship. Like she'll just kind of show up when I'm having a hard time, and it'll be like, okay, mom, I'm doing my best. Like she's take 5. Like I'm really trying here. And she's so severe and serious. It always makes me laugh. And as I continue to integrate, I spent a lot of time in the bush. And this is a picture that I took one morning when I was out walking in the bush, and you can see that the sun has these beautiful rays there's maybe writing in there. And I thought a lot about this picture. And as I looked at it, I realized there was a message here, that this is God's home, that God is at home with us here. And I took a lot out of that, that we think that we're disconnected, or we think that it has to be some grand vision of, the being showing up or some big thing, but actually like we bring ourselves with us. And then in 2019, here's what happened. the whole way through, Corey and I were doing our best. And he, I knew had a problem. I didn't quite know what it was. I knew there was something wrong. And it became harder and harder for Corey and I to relate to each other, but I was committed. And it was amazing. Like I loved him more and more and more. After I had the walk in, our relationship changed. And I could understand that even as Corey was, going through whatever he was going through, I was really able to love him. And I'm so proud of that in our relationship. July 7th, 2019, what happened was Corey died by suicide. And when you're the wife, you're the one that finds your husband. And when I found him, I had this feeling of like, okay, this is happening now. And it was the same feeling of when the car accident happened. And I realized that I had planned my life for myself. This was something that was happening that I had planned. And I was actually like, I fell on the ground and I screamed twice. My neighbors told me that I screamed twice, but I realized I had had a soul contract with my husband and it was up. And there was nothing we could do about that. And for whatever reason, um, the job the job was done. We were going no further together. And I understood that from 2014, the walk in experience, I was getting ready to have this profound experience where I would have to go through this really difficult, tragic time. There was no escaping it, there was no getting out of it. I had to see it through. And I realized I kind of laughed about it because I was like, holy shit, Nicole, like you wrote a good one. Like you really wrote a good one for yourself. And I realized after Corey died that, excuse me, I'm releasing energy, right? As I'm talking about this, I'm releasing energy. So sometimes for me that shows up as burping. Everyone said to me, we loved Corey. And it turned out that Corey had substituted his drinking for drug use. And he had fallen off a roof. He was doing a roofing project and he had fallen off a roof in 2000, I think 15 or 16. And he developed a very significant drug dependence, which he hid from me the whole way through. So Corey and I swam, worked out, had a productive life, did a really good job together, but he was an addict and he was concealing it from me. And when I think about his capacity to do that, I think, holy freaking crap. Like everyone says, he must have been so strong to be married to a light worker who's on this mission, who's very public, and for him to just show up and look good, and like take care of my friends and show us a good time. He must have been very strong. Corey loved Jesus. He was a Christian man. He loved Jesus. He was a kind and gentle soul. Corey spent a lot of time, I think, while he was sleeping, working in the lower astral dimension. So Corey would wake up and he would say, oh, he would see these terrible things. And when I would sleep next to him, it was for me to take care of him, right? Like to keep the energy safe. And I think my energy, my grounded, rooted energy was to keep him safe while he was doing this work. And I just want to say, like, what I learned subsequent to Corey dying was that, it's hard. Controlling this human avatar is hard. And I think if you've suffered great trauma, it is difficult. It is difficult to lose control of your emotions. It's difficult. It's easy. And once you start taking the drugs, right, that's when you have interference. You lose your protective layers. And, I just want to say, because I was like, man, did I fail? Did I fail myself by bringing this man into my life? And he was an addict and he was, in the drugs and he had secrets. Was this relationship a failure? And like, believe me, I have spent a long time thinking about this because suicide is conceived as an unnatural death. We think that there's some kind of wrongdoing. Or that you're going to end up traveling somewhere for the rest of your life, wandering around, not knowing who you are because you've, offended some moral code here. But when I called Rebecca that night, she said, honey, you're in shock. And she said, one thing I'll never forget. And Sheila said this earlier. She said, the earth is a really hard place for many people. And immediately I went back on the powwow trail because I really didn't know what else to do. And the elders would come up to me and they knew what happened. And they would say, your husband, he didn't do that to himself. And the more I understood the mechanism, I think we have spooky energy that if we're not fine-tuned, if we're not taking care of our energy, you can get attachments that will control your avatar, and that will kill you. And that's what happened to Corey. And I just want to say, you have to constantly take care of your protective layers, especially now more than ever. You have to make sure that you are clear, and you got to work with yourself. If you don't feel comfortable, you can hire healers that will deal this for you, to like make sure that if something is controlling you or manipulating you. I think this is also what happens when they diagnose people with that disorder, where they have like voices in their heads talking to them, psychosis or whatever that is. I can't remember off the top of my head what that's called. But I think the earth is a hard place. And so for those of you that, sorry for my little dragons. For those of you that have gone through this, and I'm sure that I'm saying this on purpose because there are people that have had this experience, I think some people do actually sign up to have this experience. And the more I understood it, I had to heal. My God, I had to heal. For the first few months, all I did was lay in bed, and I would hike through the forest, and I would go to little streams, and I would clear the streams so they could flow better. So I would come out of the bush, have my little 3 dogs with me, and I would have mud everywhere, because that was the only thing I could do, was root to the earth and take care of these little streams and clear them out. And you see in my picture, I wore a lot of ribbon skirts, so I'm a ribbon skirt maker, but it was really important to root to the earth. And I didn't know this is what I was doing, but it was happening through me, was that I needed to root to the earth. I needed to root to the earth by protecting my crown layers. And so I wore ribbon skirts almost for 3 months straight. And the way the healing worked was, it worked up through my body. And it took, I don't know, 14 or 15 months until my brain turned back on, until I could actually serve clients as a lawyer again. And what was really fascinating, so Corey died in July. My dad was diagnosed with terminal mesothelioma like 2 weeks later. He died in December. I went back to work for 3 months because I needed to make some money to pay for this, house. And then the lockdown happened in March, right? So I had nothing to do except heal. And what was amazing was, my back pain had gotten so bad because I was coping with my husband's illness, but I knew something was wrong, but it was showing up. Showed up where I was weak already, right? So this is what happened, was my hip was so bad at sometimes, like it felt like I had a giant porcupine in the back of my spine. And I knew it was possible to heal. And I really knew that like my emotional, because I had felt my back get worse over my relationship after Corey and I got back together in 2013. That's when the back pain started a lot. And I knew I was holding stress from that emotional obligation. And I have no idea, but here's what happened. I manifested a physiotherapist who knew exactly what to do, and she led me through a series of exercises that completely alleviated my pain. It's amazing, fascinating. So I've seen like probably at least 10 chiropractors and at least 5 physiotherapists before that, but no one knew what to do. And I just want to say, for anyone who is suffering, there is a time for everything, including physical healing. You need to keep going, and you need to get to the bottom of whatever it is in there before you're ever going to move to physical healing. I channeled a book about my process of grieving and resolving grief. And I think it was amazing because I was always able to watch Nicole. I was able to watch Nicole heal. It was almost like my second awareness was like, okay, she's in it right now, but she's going to make it through, and I'm going to watch her get through. And I think the role of the walk-in was to strengthen me up to go through this. And a lot of people have said, like, you've been my role model. I watched how you've done this healing process, and I don't know how you did it. And you've inspired me. And I think the book will be important whenever it's not time for it right now, but whenever the book does go out, I think there's a lot of influence that can happen there, just to help people understand how to stay present through healing. Like, you got to feel the feelings. You got to let this work through you, but you don't. For me, I watched myself in it, but I was never fully like lost to my emotions. I watched them move through me, and it was a beautiful process. And of course, to be on the lake, I mean, my goodness, like, how did I get more blessed than to live with this in my backyard? It's been really amazing, and the healing power of water, right? Um, this summer, all I did was swim in Lake Superior. I would swim for 2 hours. I would just swim from shore to shore and just this was the most beautiful experience of my life. This is why I love being a human. Like, I can't even believe I'm having these experiences. It's so fun. And I have just a few more slides. I just want to conclude with what I understood. I don't fully know what Corey and I were doing together at this point. I've tried to ask the beings, they won't talk to me about it. Um, but I definitely identify strongly with Mary Magdalene, the Mary Magdalene energy, and how she has a responsibility to heal, right? So in healing my hip, I understood that I was healing out of the collective. And when I was first, so healing my body, healing this pain that I took on, and healing out of my body was something that I agreed to. And believe me, my pain was so bad, I couldn't even bend over. Like in March, I couldn't even bend over. I couldn't walk. I could walk, but like I would end up limping home after just a few miles. It was bad, but I knew I could heal it. And so this was the belief that brought me through. And so when I was first having my regressions in 2014, when I studied past life regression, I would actually regress into a life where I was Mary Magdalene and I knew Jesus was about to make the sacrifice, and I would just cry at his feet and I would say, "You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it." And he would just continue to walk up, and he was committed to doing that. And it's like, what does the wife do when the husband goes, right? Why I feel sad about this, but like I think about like why do you sign up for these things that are so hard? And like, what do you do? What do you do when you're left here without your spouse, you know? And we do have Anishinaabe teachings about, pardon me for crying, my dogs are crazy, but just this process of healing, it's hard, and like loving someone so much and then having to go through this pain, it's hard. And like I think about the Mary and Jesus relationship, and that Jesus, he also left prematurely, and that was his responsibility to leave. And I think a lot about that, and I think about, my ability to heal through this process is a sacred thing that I signed up to do. And I think that when you're a higher consciousness being, you can make a disproportionate impact, and you can heal a lot. So by healing my hip, and by healing my emotions, and by healing through this great tragedy, I know that I'm responsible for healing, for helping heal, and for helping other people heal. And it's not easy. And I love being at home. And so now I'm at this point where there's nothing left to lose, right? I can do whatever the heck I want to do, because people know I'm, I don't know, 14 years into my career. So as a lawyer, I can do whatever I want to do. I have said completely goodbye to external expectations of what it looks like to be a lawyer. I get to choose my clients. I make a very good living. I take care of the portals in this area. And I talk to my star mom a lot. Pardon these dogs. Um, and I just feel like maybe my job is just to live an integrated human life and to show people how to manifest, how to resolve, how to deal with these difficulties, and how to know that I'm on a mission, right? I signed up, and this human avatar cries and gets chubby and likes to eat Chinese food, and like it's fun. Being in a body is really, really fun. And I think about like not to take it so seriously. Like, yes, it is my responsibility to integrate and to move into 5D and to role model that for other people, but that it's okay, like that I exist somewhere else, that I have my little girl who's like always waiting for me to come back, and I have my mom who's always shown up in meditation, and it's really quite beautiful. And if that's all that I do, I think that's enough, right? Because I think I don't know about you guys, but I always have this feeling of like, is this enough? Am I doing enough? Am I enough? Am I fulfilling my mission? And so when we went into lockdown in March, this is what I did. I beaded. This is actually a giant piece. This is 11 and this is, I don't know, like 18 inches by 11 inches. Like this is a giant piece. And I call this the whale love song. And it's just about how the whales are communicating to one another and that they take care of each other through the womb water of Mother Earth. Miss Gaia Sophia. We also did some Black Lives Matter protests. And these are the things that I get to do now. I get to be a boss. I get to represent. I get to show up places and people really want to hear what I have to say. And so I think I'm doing my job as well as I can. And this is beautiful. Like this is us at a full moon ceremony. Being born into this Indigenous community, into the Anishinaabe Nation, has just been such a blessing. It's been such a blessing in such an important way. And who else gets the gift of love? You know, it is never a mistake to love. And sometimes it doesn't look like what we expect it to, but there are no failures. So look at this sweet man, you know. I say to myself, like, if I knew that it was going to end the way that it did end, I would still do it to have had the experience of being loved, because there are things we don't understand, and there are things that we just that are so big. And so even if I don't know what this is about yet, I forgive Corey and I love him so much. And I feel a lot of compassion, because could you imagine being the person that's in the body, that's out of control, that's reliant on some external stimulant just to feel normal? I don't know what that would be like, you know? I don't know what that would be like. And it was okay that he kept that secret. I think he was doing the best that he could. So this is me in a nutshell. I've talked for 54 minutes straight without interruption. I know that there are questions and comments here, so I'm going to leave it there. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, that's where my art is. Or you can find me on Facebook through Sheila's my friend, or you can just find me. That's just about it, guys. So Instagram, Nicole_Nicole. You can take a picture of that. And now I'm going to X out of this and see what you guys have to say. So thank you so much for listening to me.